Aloha, and welcome to Feast, Dish, and Dialogue, a podcast presented by the Hawaii Ag and Culinary Alliance, sharing conversations from the Feast Summit at the annual Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. Here, leaders across food, education, agriculture, sustainability, and tourism come together to explore the future of food systems and hospitality, and how culinary sits at the center of the visitor experience in Hawaii and beyond. In this Feast Dish episode, we feature keynote speaker Michael Curtin, CEO of DC Central Kitchen, from the Feast Summit stage. Recorded live at the summit, Curtin shares perspective on how food can operate as a catalyst for social justice, workforce development, and systems change.
All right, good morning, everybody. It is a thrill to be here. I often say that I have the best job in the world because I get to come to events like this and speak to beautiful, engaged folks like yourselves. And while 320 of my colleagues are back slugging it out in Washington, D.C., not a great place to be right now, making it all happen. But getting to do that in Hawaii is really pretty cool. So I'm thrilled. I'm also humbled to be here. We got an amazing panel coming up. Saw all those righteous social entrepreneurs out in the lobby doing amazing work, and I'm honored to represent DC Central Kitchen, to be here. But it's important to remember that it's the work that is going on now and every day, and those individuals that are doing it that we really want to talk about, and I want to share their story. So last night, Alan Wong, one of the co-founders of this event, at an event to honor and remember our dear friend Charles Phan, said that Charles knew that there was more than just food on a plate. That there was family, there was history, there was culture, there was love. And it's that idea that we have to, and I think that we're here to talk about today and wrestle with, is we have to see more in food. We have to understand the immense power that food has to transform lives, to transform communities, to transform families. And that's the way we've always looked at food at DC Central Kitchen. We say that we fight hunger differently because in this country, most of our work to fight hunger has been throwing food at it. Sort of a spray and pray kind of method. Build a bigger food bank, give more backpacks to kids on the weekends, hand out more sandwiches. All work that needs to be done, but it's not the answer. We're looking in the wrong place. And we got to that conclusion, started looking in a different place because of our founder, young Robert Egger here, almost 37 years ago, went out with a group from a church that he had just joined, reluctantly, to hand out sandwiches to men and women on the streets of Washington, D.C. And what he saw that night changed him. It was a frustrating, disappointing, confusing experience as he got out of this truck on a cold, wet, damp night in Washington, D.C., and saw hundreds of people waiting in line for a sandwich in this incredibly rich city, rich country. People that he would walk by, sit next to on the subway, and never think for a second that they were hungry. And when these people got to the front of the line, his colleagues at the church greeted them by name. And Robert said, "How is it that you know these folks?" And with this sense of pride and enthusiasm, they said, "They've been coming here for years." And Robert said, "Oh my God, that's about the worst thing I've ever heard in my life." And he realized then, we know every day at DC Central Kitchen, that we're never going to feed our way out of hunger. Food won't end hunger. We can use it as a tool to strengthen bodies, empower minds, and build communities. Use it as a means, not an end, to get to a better place. But we have to think about it differently. And this is the other sort of ish conclusion that Robert saw that night. This whole enterprise of charity in our country, especially when it comes to hunger. Somehow, accidentally, because the people that were there that night are good folks, well-intentioned, love in their hearts, but somehow this idea of feeding people had become more about the redemption of the giver and not the liberation of the receiver. So the kitchen, we wanted to create a place to use food, not as an end, but as a means to liberate, to empower, to lift up. There's a Catholic archbishop in Brazil, Archbishop Camara, who said, when I feed the hungry, people call me a saint. When I ask why people are hungry, they call me a communist. But this is the question we have to ask and wrestle with to make that break from charity to justice, to getting to a place where we can use food as that agent of change. And so that is the why that always stands behind our work, our shared work, those in this room, and then allows us to talk about the what. But the why has to come first.
You're listening to Feast, Dish and Dialogue, conversations from the Feast Summit exploring how food, culture, and hospitality shape the visitor experience in Hawaii and beyond.
And so we have, in essence, 5 buckets of work at DC Central Kitchen. I'm going to walk you through quickly here. Oops. So our first one, and it all starts here, is our culinary job training program. So we work with individuals that have been generationally, systemically excluded from meaningful opportunities at employment, often folks that have histories of incarceration, addiction, trafficking, abuse, homelessness, or other traumas, and train them for jobs in the hospitality industry. Often, and as we expanded our social enterprises, and that's been my work at the kitchen for 21 years, is to take Robert's vision into the future by moving away from charity, looking at food businesses as ways not only to impact our community, but to create opportunities for individuals that otherwise wouldn't have them. And doing that, showing, modeling the kind of employer we want others to be to employ the folks that have faced these hurdles that have come through our program. And over the years, we've expanded massively, employing these graduates into our social enterprise programs. The most public-facing of which is our cafes and catering operation. We have 3 cafes now. We could have more, but that's not the point. This is as much of an exercise in breaking down stereotypes and welcoming the community into a space that they might not have anticipated or understood or felt that folks that were convicts, felons, addicts, homeless, and it's important that we use those words, are welcoming into this space, this hospitality, and showing what is indeed possible. And these spaces, each one of them tells a story. Our first cafe was in the area, it's east of the Anacostia River, the most economically marginalized area of Washington, D.C. It was important for us to be there in that community. Our second is at the Martin Luther King Library in downtown D.C., a space that is a monument to Dr. King's vision of economic empowerment and inclusion. His vision of creating a space not where anyone could walk into a restaurant and be served, but where they could afford to walk into a restaurant and have a meal because they have a good job that pays a fair wage. And our third cafe is in our new space that I'll show you in just a minute, the Klein Center for Jobs and Justice in Southwest DC. All of the cafes are run by, staffed by graduates of our program, telling a story just by the work they do every day. Our biggest social enterprise, and I think this is really, it's fascinating to hear what's happening in Hawaii about talking about school food, and we want to share our experiences with that. We started school food in 2008, actually in response to the recession, when a lot of nonprofits were closing up, laying people off, cutting programming. We knew we had to go bigger. We had to expand our mission footprint, but we had to do it in a way that wasn't relying on philanthropy and that it was not only sustainable but scalable. So we looked around and we said, what's always going to be there? We said, school food, right? What could possibly happen where schools would be closed and students wouldn't be there? Nothing, right? Foolproof idea that we had back then. But it led to programming later on, and we like to think that as 2008 started off horribly with the recession, it ended quite well with what happened at the end of 2008. There was an election. Remember who was elected? Obama, right? Okay. Hard to imagine that now. And we think that when Mrs. Obama came in, she said, well, my husband's got his thing. Everyone's going to pay attention to him. What am I going to do? What's going to be my platform, my legacy? And we like to think that she looked around and said, wow, look what those folks at DC Central Kitchen they're doing. They're training folks that haven't had jobs. They're creating jobs with living wages. They're engaging local farmers. They're buying products that they can't sell. They're expanding this mission impact from the urban area to rural areas. They're making this connection between nutrition and education. And she said, well, that's what I'm going to do. Now, we don't know for sure that happened that way, that she said that. But we do know that she's never said it didn't happen that way. But what we do know is that her focus on healthy school food inspired a lot of areas, including Washington, D.C., to up their game. We were able, because of the work we had started in 2008, to convince the school district to give us a shot at doing a small number of schools. We started that in 2010, and now that has expanded to 32 schools, a social enterprise that generates over $13 million for the kitchen, and also has created over 120 jobs, most of which are held by, again, graduates of our culinary job training program, and putting healthy food in the areas of our city that need it the most. This, for me, Healthy Corners, this is pound for pound, I think the coolest thing that we do. This is in response to a lack of grocery stores, access to fresh, healthy food in our city's food apartheid areas. Again, I mentioned east of the river earlier. That's where most of this happens. East of the Anacostia River in Washington, D.C. has 4 grocery stores for 160,000 people. There's an area, a mile stretch of Wisconsin Avenue, if any of you know Washington, D.C., west of the Anacostia River, where there are 9 grocery stores. So 1 grocery store for about every 2,000 or 3,000 people. Massive inequity based almost entirely on race. So what we've started is packaging cut product. We sell it at a discounted rate to the retailers at the corner stores. And they've created a market now for fresh, healthy food. Again, breaking down these stereotypes that people would say, well, you know, people in those neighborhoods, they're not going to buy fresh food. They don't want to buy healthy food. Well, if it's not there, those people who say that will be right 100% of the time, because no one is going to buy something that doesn't exist. But we have, again, shattered that stereotype, and as stores have seen the power, the economic power that this food can bring, they've expanded, adding refrigeration, taking out slushy machines and ring-dings and ho-hos and putting in fresh food, again, in the neighborhoods where we are serving food to the kids. Most kids in D.C. walk to school, and they stop at these corner stores on the way to and from school, and now they're buying grapes or melon instead of a candy bar or a sugary soda.
Feast, Dish, and Dialogue is presented by the Hawaii Ag and Culinary Alliance, the nonprofit organization behind the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. Founded to strengthen Hawaii's culinary and agricultural industries, HACA connects world-class culinary events with year-round investment in education, workforce development, and local agriculture. Through programs that support students, entrepreneurs, farmers, and hospitality professionals, HACA works to ensure Hawaii's food and hospitality ecosystem continues to grow, innovate, and thrive.
And this is where it all started, community meals. This is where we work with volunteers who come into the kitchen 365 days a year, cut, slice, dice, prepare these meals that we send out throughout our community. So those organizations that are working with individuals who are stuck in a place they don't want to be elevate, empower, liberate themselves, so we provide the food so they can focus on their mission. On the bottom right-hand corner, that's one of our food trucks that we send around town. We started that during COVID, when we realized that even though we were still in the schools handing out meals, we were feeding at that time about 5,000 students a day, and only about 1,000 were coming to pick up food. So there were 4,000 kids that we were missing. So we bought a couple food trucks and started doing what I called good humor for good food, with good food, and just driving around those neighborhoods handing out meals. And we've engaged these trucks again now. We're going to be using a lot of them, or we'll be using them to hit communities that are being hit by this SNAP cut the cliff that I just learned a judge has ordered the administration to pay those benefits. We'll see how that happens, what happens there. But this is just one of the ways that we are reacting to what is happening in Washington, D.C. right now. I also should have mentioned at the cafes, we can use all these social enterprises for messaging. So when federal workers were furloughed or fired in April, we started offering a 50% discount on all of our cafes for government employees or contractors. We are also now going to start a new program in our corner store, if in fact these SNAP benefits are not paid, where we will be giving out anyone who uses a SNAP card a $5 coupon to redeem for fresh fruits and vegetables. So a small intervention, but an opportunity, again, for people to stretch these benefits a little farther or use them when they don't have them. And all together, this is just sort of a snapshot of some of what we've been able to do. The most important piece, if you look at the bottom, is last year, the work that we did at DC Central Kitchen had a net financial impact to Washington, D.C. of $151 million. That's taking everything that we do together. Everything has a value. One of the biggest numbers that we use is our regarding our workforce development program, our culinary job training program, working with folks, as I mentioned, who are coming out of incarceration. As I'm sure everyone in this room knows, one of the biggest failures we have as a country is our criminal justice system. We have more people in prison than anywhere else in the world. Not per capita, just persons, people, anywhere in the world. And the one thing that we know for sure is that people who get out of prison, mostly because they can't get a job, 70% of the time will reoffend and go back to prison, where we all get to pay again, $50,000 a year to keep someone in prison. This is our system that we think is okay, and we just go along. This is the cost of doing business. Someone who graduates from our program, who's been incarcerated, has a less than 3% chance of reoffending and going back to prison. Just think of the economic value of that, and think of the cycles of these generational cycles of violence, addiction, poverty, hunger, that we're breaking because of, as we create jobs for folks to see a pathway to a different kind of life.
If today's conversation inspires you, we invite you to experience it in person at the Feast Summit, returning Thursday, November 5th, 2026 in Honolulu during the 16th Annual Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. Mark your calendars, tickets go on sale this May. Learn more at hawaiifoodandwinefestival.com.
And all of this work has been made possible and expanded exponentially in our new space, the Michael R. Klein Center for Jobs and Justice, where Roy and Denise visited last summer. For 30 years, we were in a god-awful windowless basement of a shelter in Washington, D.C. That flooded from the above and below. The plumbing was a crapshoot every day, hot in the summer, cold in the winter. But now we are in a place that speaks more to the work that we do and is a dignified, respectful place for the individuals who are doing it. To say, we value you. We're not going to hide you away in the basement of a shelter. We're not going to create more shadows or margins for you to be in. We want to be part of this economic discussion, and we want to welcome people in. This is a cafe as you enter the building that people come in and thinking that we're a soup kitchen or a shelter or a place where those people go. But this is a place of transparency, of equity, of inclusion, places where we want people to come and be part of and talk about our history. This is where our volunteers work. And we're sort of like, this is our Trojan horse of ideas. And we have a waiting list months long for people to come in because they think they're making food for poor people. But when we engage, they work with our staff and our students and talk about their experiences. And then they come to understand the power of what they're doing. Right? If we advertise, hey, come down and let's have a discussion about the opportunities for folks getting out of prison, the cost of daycare, the generational recidivism rate. Not a lot of people would probably sign up for that conversation, but we bring them in and have that conversation and change minds. And our next project is in that same building. We're taking another 10,000 square feet, going to add a mezzanine, so another 17,000 square feet for a produce market with a fast casual salad concept in the middle. This will be affordable, healthy, fresh food, mostly for folks who are using SNAP, but available to everybody. A place where we can have community discussions about food as medicine, about breaking down and fixing these social determinants of health that have crippled so much of our community in Washington, D.C. and communities around the country. And all of this is possible. All of this is possible because we look at hunger differently. Right? We want to, there's a Sufi mystic, Rumi, said, you need to close both eyes and see with the third. And see that potential that food has that we've overlooked. You know, that Charles Fan talked about. Food is more than what's on the plate. Food is culture. Food is family. Food is possibility. It's potential. And it is the tool that can make all of our shared communities a more welcoming, a fairer, a more equitable place for everyone. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Mahalo for listening to Feast, Dish, and Dialogue. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe and share it with someone passionate about food, agriculture, and hospitality. To learn more about the Feast Summit and the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival, visit hawaiifoodandwinefestival.com. Be sure to join us for the next episode of Feast, Dish, and Dialogue.